Bonjour les amis, bienvenue, bienvenue à Paris. Bienvenue. I see you popping in. As always, we have some scammers in the comment section, so please don't click on any of those links that you see scroll by, just ignore them. Thank you. Bonjour, bonjour, bonjour. I hope you enjoy these surroundings. I've been sitting here for a little while. It's quite nice today. Bonjour. Welcome to the 20th arrondissement. Welcome to the village of Charonne. It is a gorgeous day. I was hoping the sun, the beautiful weather we've had all week would continue. And it has, even though it's a lot chillier than it was. Probably about 55 Fahrenheit this afternoon. It's 5 p.m. in Paris. I want to show you where I am. Just ignore them. Look at that. See this beautiful trellis? I'm going to stroll around this garden as we get started. Already 200 of you here. This is wonderful. Thank you for joining me. The big buildings you see behind these walls are actually schools. And I was here earlier this week and it was so lively. Today you can hear the children playing in the square, in the little garden, but this week you could hear during recess all the children behind the walls of these schools. There are a lot of schools in this neighborhood. So as always today, we are going to talk a little bit about the past and how this beautiful part of Paris came to be, but we will also take an honest look at the neighborhood today, what it's become, what's happening here. Around me you see a lot of young families. Those are part of the socio-demographics in a lot of those former villages of Paris. And you will also see a variety of people, and this is what I like here in Charonne. Could you give me a sound check and let me know? It's windy today, so I want to make sure you can all hear me. Somebody could just let me know, that would be wonderful. Merci. So we are in a square or a public garden, a neighborhood garden. We've been through a lot of them, and you know a lot of them in Paris already. But this one is a little bit special. It's surrounded by very old homes. Bienvenue if you just joined us. This is Véronique Véro, your best French friend in France. I am a virtual tour guide, a French language instructor, and a full-time content creator. Merci. Thank you for confirming the sound is good. Look at this big container here. I wouldn't want to be the gardener taking care of this. So the gardens in Paris are not looking that great right now. The water fountains were cut off for many months in the winter. They took a while to reopen them. We'll talk about that as we walk up the neighborhood. Thank you for confirming the sound. There is some sand flying. The kids are running around and there's dust you see on the ground. So it's kind of flying in the air. So this is a great family park and a great park for neighborhood kids to hang out. The little ones are playing. You can see them all over. And then you have teenagers who hang out with their friends. So it's really fun. Bonjour. Bonjour, bonjour. Got to be polite with the guards of the park that just walked by. Keeping an eye on things. La mairie de Paris. They are part of the City Hall of Paris, making sure everything's okay. So like I was saying, even though I'm facing the sun here, beautiful homes around this square, and some of them are from the 19th century. They're kind of lower, you can see. So we have a lot of villages in Paris, or I should say former villages. But a couple of them are quite special. Montmartre is one, And Charonne is another one. This is where we are today. So if you're looking on the map, you can find us in the northeast corner of Paris, in the heart of the 20th arrondissement. A lot of people go to Montmartre. It's a very touristy village, though I think it's still magical early in the morning and late at night. But Charonne doesn't really get the foot traffic that Montmartre gets, and so that makes it a really cool place. When you are tired of being in downtown Paris and want to stay away from the crowds, you can come here. And I'm going to show you some of the sites today. There are more, but it's one of these neighborhoods where it pays off to explore. So this square, a long time ago, was actually a storage facility for cobblestones. And cobblestones, les pavés parisiens, are made with a stone in French called le grès, G-R-E-S. So the square, the garden, is called le square de Grès. And you can see some of these cobblestones right here. Wouldn't be Paris otherwise, would it? Now this week, I'm going to leave the square for now. This week, I have shown you a beautiful little alleyway. In fact, I've seen a lot of great alleyways this week, and I've shared them as I always do on Facebook and on Instagram. And I've shown you this one, in fact. Even though I'm facing the sun, it's not ideal. But picture the people living in those old homes there, all the way to the end. And of course, you have digicodes and gates on both sides. But picture living here during the lockdown, the confinement, where you can step outside, be next to that park, listen to the kids play during the week, and then just sit on those chairs and relax. Isn't that lovely? So this is the photo I shared earlier this week that a lot of people enjoyed. And here's the pesky digicode. But then again, there didn't used to be that many digicodes. You used to be able to get into most buildings when I lived in Paris 30 years ago. But the digicodes, I guess, help people with privacy, and it's understandable. So we have some older homes, and we will see a few. There is, in fact, a really nice one here. Look at the lion head above the door. Most of these homes are from the 19th century. Some of them are older. Now the trick is that a lot of them hide private courtyards and garden, which of course we are not invited into. There is one spot where we can actually push the door and take a peek at the courtyard, and I'm going to take you there. I like to be honest when I share neighborhoods, and I want to show you something. This is what you see as soon as you step outside this little square, this garden. Do you see those high rises? There's a kid coming on his little. These were erected in the 1970s and later. And they are part of the neighborhood as well. In fact, this is a very diverse neighborhood, multi-ethnic neighborhood. You would see a lot of immigrants or people who are, descendants of immigrants living here around Charonne. And so it feels like Charonne is really walled in at times. But a long time ago, about 30 years ago, locals really fought against that to try and preserve the heart of the neighborhood. And they've mostly managed. You can still get the village vibes here. And as you stroll around the streets, you can still enjoy some of the beauty of the neighborhood. So we're going now to head for the heart of the neighborhood, which is a street There's a little square on the right-hand side, also named after that sandstone. It's called le Square des Grès. It's called la Place des Grès. And I noticed earlier when I came in, it was completely empty this week, except for the school kids coming out of school. And when I stopped by earlier, I saw a lot of young people because one of the restaurants is offering takeout for drinks. And so they have recreated a terrace of sorts, which they really aren't supposed to do. We are supposed to be going through a third lockdown of sorts. I'm saying of sorts because it's kind of a weird one. So I'll show you this in a minute, but look at the back of some of these houses. And like I said, behind walls, behind gates. This is what happens a lot in Paris and in France in general. The French like to hide behind walls, gates, and fences, as you probably know if you've traveled around the country. Now here is the little square, the little place or square I was telling you about. Here is the restaurant that does takeout. It's closed for everything else right now. And you can see all these young people having a good time. They're trying to respect social distancing some. I can see them doing it. But this is all they can do to meet and enjoy a drink. Look at this beautiful square, this place. If you just joined us, welcome. My name is Véro. I am a Paris-based tour guide, virtual tour guide as it is, and I am taking you around the beautiful former village of Charonne, a major neighborhood in the 20th arrondissement. If you've traveled around the 20th arrondissement, sections like Belleville, Ménilmontant, or here, you can see that these are former working class neighborhoods. So don't be surprised to see here an office that belongs to the French Communist Party. She's raising her fist, yes. It's probably the only one left in the 20th actually. But don't be surprised to see this. Belleville, which is a very popular neighborhood, is nicknamed Belleville la Rouge, Belleville the Red. And there's a reason for that. It's because a lot of working class workers, factory workers congregated here after the mid-19th century. And a lot of those ideas, a lot of trade unions set up shop in these neighborhoods. Pardon, mesdemoiselles, merci. Here is La Rue Saint Blaise. You see the name? So this has been traditionally the lifeline of the Charonne village. I want you to picture a village that from the 1500s, the high Middle Ages, was very pastoral, the countryside outside Paris. We are sitting on the side of the hill where Belleville sits. And so this was really the countryside here. And for a long, long time, people have come here. The affluent people of Paris have come here, the aristocracy first, and then the bourgeois, to buy secondary home, to come and breathe the good air of Charonne, to eat and drink the good milk of Charonne. There were cows in this area until the 1960s. So you can kind of get a feel for that along the street. Now, of course, like everything I show you, it's going to be so quiet today because the restaurants are closed. On the left-hand side, those blue doors are part of Paris Atelier. Do you see the name? There's another one here. So it's very, very much quiet and closed. So I love the reflection of the window in the window there. And Paris Atelier is a place where locals can indulge in cultural activities. They offer a very interesting program, crafts. So if we look here, you have bijoux. They can learn how to make jewelry. They can learn how to draw. They can learn how to write, photography. So a big association in many ways, and takes all three of these doors here. And there's a lot of that going on in the Charonne neighborhood. Probably because a lot of people are not wealthy. And so there's a lot of solidarity, and they try and help the kids. This is the cat that was meowing. I was hearing a cat. Minou, c'est toi qui fais ça? He's gone. So you see those little courtyards I was telling you about? So this beautiful neighborhood that had some really beautiful homes at some point in time, in fact, up to the early 20th century, this was quite a chic street in many sections, especially towards the top there. This neighborhood got really transformed in the mid-19th century because Charonne, that for a long time sat outside the city limits, like those neighborhoods I've taken you to before. Remember the Farmers General Wall? That wall that Louis XVI erected for taxation purposes? Well, Charonne, like Montmartre, like Belleville, like La Villette, all these places I've taken you to used to sit outside those walls. So people could come here and buy affordable wine. But in 1860, Napoleon III decided to enlarge the city. I won't spend too much time on the details, but when he did this, Charonne, Montmartre, Belleville, a lot of these communes or former villages, there were 11 of them, were either split up or fully incorporated or annexed into the city of Paris. Charonne was actually split up between a nearby village, Batignolles, as well as another town you may know on the other side of the beltway, the périphérique, known as Montreuil. But what remained stayed on the side, and it became part of the 20th arrondissement. So let's see if I can get you inside this. Most of the doors are closed. I think this one's open, but we will have to stop behind the gate. But at least you'll get a feel for what it's like, or what it was like to live in a place like this. So what you see here are very low buildings. Here's a garden. You see? There's a beautiful garden, and the people it's so peaceful. You can't hear the street at all. Oh, and I see a beautiful wisteria. Do you see the wisteria right there? And this glass and steel awning. It's called une marquise. This is gorgeous. So some people live here, and I'm telling you, if you're lucky enough to land an apartment here, you probably don't move. So this is the only place where you can actually see what's inside. All the other ones are protected by digicodes. Any reputable tour guide who brings you here will show you this spot. It's hardly a secret. Restaurants all closed. That's not a surprise. So look at this street. I have a photo for you. Look at this photo taken along the street, La Rue Saint Blaise, probably in the early 20th century. Look at that. Now, and then. So what's happened is that they have really tried to preserve the neighborhood. The locals fought long and hard in the 70s when those big high-rises started going up, so the neighborhood could be saved, especially this section. And they have mostly succeeded, I would say. It would be so nice without the mopeds. Have that removed. Look at this. This is pretty too. Yeah, the courtyards are always the best part. Some of the restaurants, yes, I see your question. Some of the restaurants do takeout. In fact, a lot of them have started doing takeout, but not all. I think it's really costly to do takeout. The one on the left here, Les Rêveuses, the Dreamers, does it. We will stop by and look at their window. But for now, let's enjoy the site. It's beautiful. You see, we're walking towards the church. And I stopped on purpose in front of this restaurant, which is closed. It's called Le Casque d'Or. And I stopped here because there's a good story about Le Casque d'Or. Le Casque d'Or, the golden helmet, was actually a woman who lived during the Belle Époque, what we call the Belle Époque, late 19th century, early 20th century. And she was a prostitute, a very poor girl who started becoming a prostitute when she was very young. And to make a very long story short, there were gangs in all those working class neighborhoods, in Montmartre, in Belleville, in Charonne and other neighborhoods. And they were called the Apaches, les Apaches. They were young men, 15 to 25 years old, and they were criminals. They went all over Paris and terrorized the bourgeois and committed crimes, of course. Casque d'Or was a prostitute, and she fell in love, or I would say she had two of the Apache gang members fall in love with her. Things got ugly pretty fast and didn't end very well. Both of them were sent away to what we call le bagne, B-A-G-N-E, which means they were shipped to the former French colonies for forced labor. They never returned. Eventually, Casque d'Or got married, stopped being a prostitute, and she wrote her memoirs, acted in a play, and was Casque d'Or in the play, but she got married and unfortunately died when she was 55 years old because she wasn't in very good health. There she is, Casque d'Or. Now, if you say Casque d'Or to French natives, especially cinephiles, they will know immediately who you are talking about. They may not know Amélie, this young woman I showed you, but this is who they will immediately think of. The beautiful woman on the left is actress Simone Signoret, and this is one of her most famous roles when she was still pretty young in a beautiful movie released in the early 1950s. And Simone played the part of Casque d'Or. And for the rest of her career, people always refer to her as Casque d'Or. By the way, Casque d'Or, golden helmet, was because the original lady, the lady had beautiful cascading blonde hair. And so, yes, this is the movie I mentioned to you on Facebook, and I even shared a preview of the movie that came out at that time. So if you get a chance to watch this movie, it's called Casque d'Or again, I would encourage you to, because it will show you how working classes lived in late 19th century, early 20th century Paris. It will also show you how they entertain themselves, in particular in those restaurants along the Seine River or the Marne River east of Paris, or in neighborhoods like Charonne and Montmartre, and dancing, enjoying food, and that cheap little wine that was known as le guinguet, which is why the name of those restaurants was Guinguette. So I thought it'd be fun for you to hear this story. And today, of course, Le Casque d'Or is closed. Like a lot of everything else, well, this is a real estate agency. Coucou! This is a real estate agency, so it should be closed. And here is Les Rêveuses, which I've seen open this week, but it seems very closed today. So they do take out at this restaurant. We can look a little bit at the menu here. You can see that they have what we call formule. Une formule is what you get. It's a prefix meal, mostly for lunch. So you pay 15 euros, and for 15 euros you get une entrée, which is your first course, un plat, your main course, plus une boisson. That's unusual, so this is probably an alcoholic beverage. Or you choose between un plat, the main course, une boisson, the alcoholic beverage, and dessert. This is for those with a sweet tooth. If you add 2 euros, for 17 euros here, you have all 3 courses plus the drink. And if you want to sample one of their artisanal ciders and microbrews, you need to add 2 euros. So this gives you an idea of how much they charge. Like most restaurants in what have become now trendy neighborhoods with hipsters, you will have burgers. And you have them here too. This part of the restaurant is also always referred to as l'ardoise, the slate. And this is where they put the specials. And they cross them out, of course, as they sell out. I see they haven't updated it. I was here on Friday. So pretty standard fare. And this is what you had in this neighborhood for a really long time, simple restaurants, bistros. So now, of course, they put a little trendy spin on them. See, cheesecake, carrot cake, that's misspelled. The bottle of wine is 15 euros. I used to live in a place where they would charge almost 15 euros for a glass of wine. So, like I said, they've managed to keep the style or the atmosphere in the street after locals fought to protect it. And even those newer buildings that were erected in the 80s kind of respect what was done here in the 19th century. You can see they're pretty low, and they somehow blend in. But the really old buildings on the street are this one. This is really old. It's possible that they added the top floor later too. And there are old postcards that you can find online, black and white pictures, where you see pictures of locals taken at this very window and this store, which wasn't at the time a hair salon, but it's been here pretty much forever. Side street here, La Rue Ribelette. Now, interestingly, a lot of the local streets have names that remind you of all the vineyards that used to be here. I don't know if you realize this, but the Île-de-France, the region around Paris, was really famous for its wine through the Middle Ages. In fact, the wine was excellent. It was better known than the Bordelais or the Burgundy. Things changed over time, of course. We still have vineyards. Everybody knows the vineyard in Montmartre, but there are actually several vineyards left in Paris. Of course, over time, the wine quality, I would say, decreased a little bit. And then they ended up making that guinguet I was telling you about, that sour little wine that all these working classes enjoyed in their guinguettes on Sundays. This is Le Souk de Paname, very much closed. And it used to be a salon de thé, a tea room. Closed, closed. This is the new Paris. A lot of things are closed. And I'm sure you've spotted these colorful pots that line the street. They kind of add a nice touch, even though they're looking a little run down and neglected. But somebody's still taking care of these, I can tell. They have their own little urban garden right by this restaurant or store. I'm not sure what Le 11 is. But I wish you could have seen the street last summer when restaurants reopened, because the restaurants were open, and at night it's a pretty young crowd and it's really lively. So you have to use your imagination, not just to picture the village it once was, but also what it was just a few months ago before our restaurants closed and our cafes and all that. So Charonne, very popular place. In the 18th century, the 17th century, with the affluent, they came here, they built nice houses in the countryside, and then the people who worked for them somehow found housing around here in those little homes, the village homes that we've seen. And then in the mid-19th century, they had factories, and we had factory workers making hats, making candles, making matches, making all sorts of things. So the neighborhood really, really picked up in the mid-19th century when the industrialization started around Paris, around Europe. And the train came to this neighborhood. Trying to walk slowly so you can enjoy the sights, the peaceful sights, minus the mopeds. Yes, the government is helping some of the business owners. Restaurants do get some money while they're being closed. Their employees can file for unemployment. In fact, some of them have figured out it's better for them to wait instead of reopening. Others have chosen to do takeout. So if it weren't for the traffic, loud, we would be reaching a very peaceful square named like the street. The square is called Place Saint Blaise. And here is the street we just came from, La Rue Saint Blaise. And if we were in a village, as it was a long time ago, there's always a village square, there's always a church. There might have been shops too, specialty shops, grocery stores. Those are mostly gone now, but we still have une boulangerie. I went there the other day, right here. And in fact, it's called La Boulangerie du Village. You see? Right there. So very busy street, no doubt. And right here, we are standing outside what used to anchor a lot of villages and still anchors this one, a beautiful church. Saint Germain de Charonne, named after Saint Germain, or Germain, a bishop of Auxerre in Burgundy in the 5th century. I'm going to wait here to cross. It'd be a shame to get hit. Yes, all the food stores are open because they are deemed essential. Exactly. You get that right. Look at this beautiful site here. We have the presbytery next to the church. There's a little garden right next to it where I'll be meeting my club members later for the extension tour that we're going to do in their private Facebook group. And here is the church. Now, I don't live stream inside churches, religious places, but I will share in a blog post I wrote several years ago in the video notes. As soon as I come off the air, I will share a painting in that blog post. That's a bit of an urban legend, but they're saying that Germain, Saint Germain, the Bishop of Auxerre, was here in the late 5th century, and he met a young girl here. She was not even 10 years old. Her name was Geneviève. She lived in Nanterre, nearby, a city west of Paris, and she was to become Saint Geneviève, the patron saint of Paris. It's a very pretty church. It's been worked on a lot, it's been modified a lot. The older section is from the 12th century, and it's basically the base of the clock tower here. And then they did work on it from the 16th through the 18th century. And a few years ago, they closed it to renovate it. Now, why Charonne is pretty exceptional, just like Montmartre, is because of all the villages that were incorporated, annexed into Paris in the mid-19th century. They are the only two that have kept their churches, and next to their churches, their parish cemeteries. None of the others have. So this is quite exceptional. And so today, here is La Rue Saint Blaise. We just walked up. Up here, you probably recognize it. This does look like a village street, doesn't it? It's not that quiet. I mean, there are people walking around. It's just the stores are closed. So our walk is going to take us into the cemetery, this old parish cemetery. It's quite unique and quite small. I don't know how many graves are in there, probably fewer than 700. If you compare the size of this cemetery to other Parisian cemeteries like the Montmartre cemetery where I've taken you, or the Père Lachaise, which sits nearby because the Père Lachaise neighborhood is part of the 20th arrondissement, then you will see it's very small. This is the presbytery. It's open during the week. Beautiful. So Cimetière de Charonne, which was expanded on, they kept enlarging it. It was a former parish cemetery, they tell you, and then it became the communal, cimetière communal. Une commune is a village, an administrative entity, and they were created during the French Revolution in the 1790s. So this is when this cemetery became the cemetery of the commune. Boy, it's a happening place. It was so quiet this week when I was here. Now, I was very lucky because when I came here on Monday, there was a very nice gentleman, nobody was here, and there was a very nice gentleman sitting on a bench, and he was very intent on chatting. So I sat down next to him, and he told me he'd been coming here for 15 years because his wife is buried here, and he knew all the stories of all the people in the cemetery, and he even introduced me to the cemetery cat who is named Grisou, giant cat. He looks like a puma. And Grisou has been here, according to the gentleman, for at least 13 years. So I was able to take a picture of him. I hope we see him today, but if we don't, I'll share the picture. Look how pretty this is. So this is not your big tourist attraction, the Père Lachaise. This is a small cemetery. You probably wouldn't recognize most of the names in here, but I think I'll highlight just a few, 2 or 3 graves that I think are of interest, because they are related to the story of Paris, the history of Paris, not necessarily in the past, actually. I'm keeping an eye out for my friend Grisou the cat, in case I see him. He likes to lounge in the sun, like cats have been known to do. Here is a wall that has a plaque on it, and they tell us that in 1897, There were a lot of fédérés. Les fédérés were the communards, the people who fought during the Commune, this very violent uprising that lasted only 3 months, from March through May of 1871. We talked about it last week at the Parc des Buttes-Chaumont. It ended in a bloodshed, and a lot of the communards, the rebels, if you want, were shot down and buried hastily in mass graves all over Paris, including in the lake, the Buttes-Chaumont lake I showed you last week. But in 1897, this plaque tells us that some of those bodies were recovered and buried here against this wall. So this is a reminder of a very violent episode in Paris history, La Commune. Welcome if you've just joined us. My name is Véro. I'll be your Parisian tour guide today, and we are strolling around the 20th arrondissement in a lovely former village known as Charonne. I have been taking you through quite a few of these villages over the last few months. I live in the 17th arrondissement. I took you to les Batignolles-Monceau on several virtual tours. I took you to Montmartre, I took you to La Villette, and today we are in Charonne. All of those virtual tours, by the way, are on the Friends with Véro YouTube channel. More and more people are discovering my channel, and I'm very happy about that. You can travel virtually all over Paris and France when you go there, so please go and subscribe. Here is a grave that doesn't look very old, does it? The name is Josette Malhot Clotis, born 1910, dead 1940, and 2 boys, Gauthier and Vincent Malhot, both dead in 1961. They were brothers. The name Malhot might remind you of something. André Malhot is a huge name in 20th century France, probably one of the most recognizable names. He was an award-winning author, a great traveler who loved Asia, China in particular. He was a man who was very committed to defending worthy causes. He fought in the Spanish Civil War before World War II. He joined the Resistance during World War II in France. He had a very complicated personal life and knew he knew loss in his personal life. This woman, Clotis, Josette Clotis, was his mistress when he was still married. They had 2 sons, Gauthier and Vincent. Sadly, Josette died in 1944 in a terrible accident in a train station. The boys grew up, they were pretty much estranged from their father. And in 1961, in May of 1961, they both died in a car crash, which was a tragedy in Malraux's life, of course. André Malraux is also known for the fact that he was the Minister of Cultural Affairs of Charles de Gaulle during the de Gaulle presidency. André Malraux was a very good friend of Jackie Kennedy. Just a month after his sons died in that car crash, the Kennedys visited Paris for the first time. Jackie was in awe of Malraux. She said he was one of the most cultivated men she had ever met. They became friends of sorts, and she convinced him to let her bring the Mona Lisa, La Joconde, to Washington, D.C. And this is what you see here. In 1963, early 1963, Mona Lisa made it to Washington, D.C. You can see Jackie next to Malraux, she's looking very proud, and John Kennedy next to him. The reason why you should care about André Malraux is really not even all that. It's because André Malraux is the reason so many of us can enjoy beautiful places in Paris and all over France. As the Minister of Cultural Affairs of de Gaulle, he pushed for groundbreaking laws, the Malraux laws in the 60s, that enabled the French government to protect and preserve and restore not just buildings or monuments, but entire towns, entire neighborhoods. So if you have ever enjoyed a stroll in Le Marais, if you have ever enjoyed a stroll in the beautiful town of Sarlat, or in Le Vieux-Lyon, the old part of Lyon, then you owe it to these laws, the Malhot laws. And this is why I stopped in front of this grave today. I will take you to another one, which is a bit of an institution here, though it's also an urban legend, but it's actually a historical monument of France. It's protected, so we have to talk about it. This is the grave of a gentleman. You can see his name. I hope you can read this. His name was Beg, but his nickname was Magloire, which I think is hilarious, my glory. He was a painter and a nice guy, by all accounts, but he was also a drunk. And so he claimed to be a patriot, a poet, a philosopher. And there was an urban legend saying that he had even been the private secretary of Monsieur de Robespierre, who was one of the leading figures in the French Revolution, especially during the Terror. There's no proof of that at all. And in fact, the statue you see here was probably found in a junkyard and added by some of his friends when he got buried. But les Charonnais, the people of Charonne, are very proud of this grave. So I thought I would show it to you, the grave of Monsieur Magloire. Looking for my kitty friend, can't find him. He's probably hiding. Saturdays are too busy, I guess, for his taste. That's okay, I'll share a photo later. 2 more graves to show you, and then we will be wrapping up this tour so I can meet my club members, and I will take them to a secret garden. A lot of people, even those who come here in Charonne, in the village, don't go see. So I think they will enjoy that. I always mention the Friends with Véro Club. It's just turned 1, and I have a lot of fun events lined up for club members, especially those who join at the flaneur level, the most popular level in the club. We are going to celebrate our 1-year anniversary in style. I am very grateful to club members who enable me to work full-time now as a virtual tour guide and a content creator. All the information to join the club will be in the video notes as soon as I come off the air. And if you would like to have fun in Paris later this month, join the club. I promise you won't regret it. We have a very friendly community known as La Bande de Véro. I call them the gang. And as some of them can attest, if they are here today, I think I've seen their names go by, I am very generous with content. Merci beaucoup. I see your messages. All right. This young lady is an unknown. I don't know who she is. But when I came here this week, I fell in love with this. Look at that. Her name was Léon Fortin. She was born in 1901 and died in 1921 at 20 years old. And then there's a name, a gentleman, Pierre Fortin. He was born 7 years after her, 1908, and died in 1939, right before World War II. So I don't know if they were brother and sister, or if they were husband and wife. I have no idea. But when I saw this, I just stopped. Look at that. You see the flowers she's holding, and you see how her dress just drapes around her body, and you can see her beautiful shoes. I don't want to get too close to the... Look at that. See the shoes? So it's the unknown lady statue, exactly, Linda, and I like it this way. You can't all be coming to cemeteries just about celebrities. Once in a while, it's nice to just admire what unknowns have done for their families. I will show you one last one that's connected to the history of Paris, though I must say more recent history this time. The little church of Saint Germain de Charonne. It doesn't have a transept anymore. They've taken it out, so it looks a lot smaller than it once did, I'm sure. Let me find that grave since I'm not wearing my glasses. It's always... Oh, there she is. You may remember that in 2015, Paris was hit really hard in November of 2015 by several terror attacks, coordinated attacks in several sites. And there were a lot of victims, but the worst place was the Bataclan, this concert hall, this popular concert hall. And over 90 people died that night. And a lot of them were young people who were there for a concert. So her name was Claire, and here is her picture. She was born in 1991 and died at the Bataclan in 2015. And the Bataclan is also part of the history of Paris and France in recent years. It's a touching memento her family, her friends left. Claire, nous t'aimons. Claire, we love you. Rest in peace, Claire. So peaceful. Here he is. Here is Grisou, my friends. I told you about him. Grisou, tu viens me voir? Viens me voir. Viens dire bonjour. Viens dire bonjour, la star. Viens. Grisou. Hey, he's like, I'm 13 years old. I do whatever I want. Grisou. Tu me connais, on s'est rencontrés déjà. Grisou. Tu viens me voir? Viens me voir. Allez. Allez. He's such a cat. Well, you are very lucky, my friends. This is the famous Grisou from the Charonne cemetery. I was hoping he'd make an appearance. Yes. Bonjour. Bonjour. All right. So this is going to conclude our visit. So I can go and meet my club members in their private Facebook group. I had a photo I needed to show you before we wrap up. Oh, I have it. I'll show it to you outside. Yeah, that's right, Missy. He's the star of the show. He's a massive cat. He's very big. Now, we have other people that are somewhat well known in Paris buried here. One of them I know is a collaborator who was executed during the liberation of Paris. So I probably won't spend too much time showing him to you. Grisou is a star. He poses for photos. I saw him do it on Monday. Look at this pretty site of the church right here. So again, in the video notes on Facebook and on YouTube later, I will be sharing a link to my blog post that I wrote several years ago, and with that you'll be able to set a foot inside the church and see that painting of Saint Germain meeting Geneviève, the future Saint Geneviève. Always read the video notes when I share them on YouTube, because I tend to share more information there, links and photos and things like that. Bonjour, monsieur. Vous fermez? Oui. Ah, just in time. They're closing. Bonne soirée, monsieur.
Merci également.
Au revoir. He was waiting for us to get out. That's why Grisou showed up. Smart cat. He knew we were leaving. So here is the street we came up from, La Rue Saint Blaise. This was again the square, the place, the main square in the neighborhood. Of course, now you have cars. So if you keep going in this direction, that's where we're headed with the club members, you would reach the Père Lachaise eventually. So just a little picture to show you before I say goodbye. I'm going to hide these ugly buildings over there. This was this square with the church a long, long time ago, back when Charonne was a village, with vineyards, with fields. I forgot to mention there was a gypsum quarry as well, just like in Montmartre, just like in les Buttes-Chaumont. So you can see Paris then and now. So don't hesitate to come here. And I think you will enjoy it. It's really fun to come here. And voila, I'm going to do this for now. Ah, I can breathe again. Wonderful. Merci, my friends, for joining me today. We have a lot of fun events coming in April to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of my Patreon program, and to thank the people who have made all this possible, because I love my job and I love sharing Paris and France with you. So if you've enjoyed this tour, I have a virtual tip jar on PayPal. The information will be in the video notes as well. And your donations, of course, are gratefully accepted. And I hope you come to Charonne when you return to Paris. Happy Easter to all. I will be seeing you very, very soon. À bientôt.